Welcome, Buff fans. If you're still Buff fans, and if you're still hanging around after last week, Matt Smith. Uh, uh, Glad you're joining me as we recap. Really, arguably the worst game of the Coach Prime era.
Not arguably. I think it was definitively the worst one.
You think it was definitively okay? I mean,
Yeah.
you could argue the Oregon game or the Washington State game a couple years ago, but clearly, a brutal game. 53-7 loss at Utah, and we're going to talk about it, break it down a little bit, and look ahead to. At least I've got a theory as why there's hope over the next 4 weeks and why Buff fans shouldn't bail on this team just yet. But Matt, first off, have you caught up on your sleep yet? I mean, that's maybe the brutal part on our side is that it was 8:15 on the road and we had to fly home the next day.
Yeah, I definitely cheered a little bit when I saw that the West Virginia kickoff time was in the morning because I got to do that 5 a.m. flight thing again out of
Yeah,
Pittsburgh on Sunday. So I
you'll have
was,
plenty of sleep before you fly home
yeah, I'll
then.
be fine. Yeah, yeah. Didn't sleep on the way out of Utah, but honestly, after that one, probably a good thing to when you finally wake up, be back in Colorado.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a long turnaround, and if you're doing those in a one-off, it's a little bit more jarring than if you're doing that consistently. So, but I'm here, and I know you are too. Did you have a good time catching up with the kiddos down there?
Yeah, that was the best part of the trip was I went down on
I bet it was.
Thursday and my daughter's up at Utah State, so I went and hung out with her afternoon and evening on Thursday, and my son is a freshman at BYU, and went down and hung out with him Friday afternoon and evening, and then the game on Saturday. So it was great seeing them, and you know, Utah State and BYU are rivals, so they kind of go back and forth. But the one thing they can bond on is they both hate Utah, and so we were all hoping that CU would win that one, because they hate Utah, and I would rather cover a win. So it didn't work out the way we wanted, but it was great seeing the kids, and they're doing great, and awesome seeing them in their element. And my son, I had not seen. Actually, neither one of them. I hadn't seen where they currently live, so it was nice seeing their places and spending time with them.
Good, good. Well, I'm glad it was a good trip for you, at least in that regard. And it's always good to know that that hard-earned cash that you're spending on those good educations is going to use, right? And
Yeah.
because I'll tell you, some of the cash that was spent on my education didn't go to great use. So I got to imagine that it feels pretty rewarding as a parent when you're like, okay, well, it's tough to write some of those checks, but at least that they're
Yeah.
getting a lot out of it.
And they're both doing well in school and both loving where they live. And, the campuses are beautiful. That's one thing about Utah is, people can have their opinion on every state, whatever, but the campuses all over Utah are pretty beautiful. So,
Yeah, they are.
they're pretty awesome. And they do love their vowels in mountains, though. They got the Y up in
Oh yeah,
Provo for BYU, and I think
sure.
there's a U in Salt Lake, and I don't know if it's up in the mountains, but there's definitely a block A for Aggies at Utah State, high up on top of buildings, things like that. So they love to elevate their vowels in Utah.
Well, one day we'd love to have a similar carving into the flat irons of Deion Sanders' face if he had
Yeah,
his own choice. But after that game on Saturday night, feels like they're ways away from being in that discussion. And yeah,
yeah,
Brian, you said arguably the worst game. I think it was definitively the worst game, and I'll say this. Nobody expected them to win at Oregon. It was a miracle start in 2023, as it was. At least those of us who knew what awaited them at Oregon knew what was
yeah,
coming in some form or fashion.
right.
And then the Washington State game, that was the old Yeller game on the 2023 season. It was like, okay, we're all just trying to get to 2024 here. So
Yeah,
at least there was still something to look forward to. That was really bad though, as far as the way they got beat. The other night, that was as incompetent as they've looked yet under Coach
yeah,
Prime
hmm,
to such a jarring degree that um, there's a lot to take out of it, while all the while understanding that there isn't actually that much to take out of it for 2025. And it's a little bit of a nuanced and complex situation, but it was very eye opening in the fact that in year three, the program is not on the trajectory that they want to be on or that they
yeah,
expected to be on. And
hmm,
Kyle Whittingham, who has built a sustainable program over 2 decades and has achieved real success and has raised the floor to such a degree where last year they're so banged up and that's considered a down year for them. And they instantly are just more healthy this year and they're way
Yeah.
better, you know? So it's impressive to see what he's done with that program and certainly highlighted the differences between Colorado and Utah afterwards.
Yeah, and and we're all agree with you that it's probably the worst game is that in 2023, those two games, Oregon and Washington State, it was Bo Nix and Cam Ward at quarterback in those games. This was
Sure.
Bird Ficklin,
Yeah.
a freshman who looks very talented, and so I don't want to downplay him too much, but he's a freshman making his first start. That was a senior Bo Nix and I think it was a fourth year
Junior.
Cam
Yeah.
Ward,
Yeah.
at Washington State. So yeah, that is very different in that regard. And yeah, as far as Whittingham, elevated to the point that they lose to BYU, and I'm seeing Utah fans last week looking forward to like, man, can't wait till the next era because it's the same old with Whittingham. It's like, really? I'll take the same old. And
Any day.
there's about
Yeah.
90% of the programs in this country that would take the same old, with Kyle Whittingham. Like, yeah, he's only gonna win us 8, 9, 10 games this year. Like, really? You know, uh,
Playing the world's tiniest violin for all
right,
those
yeah,
Utes fans.
right. And so yeah, which leads into a theory that I've got that we can as we talk about the future games we can talk about. But let's wrap up this game. I mean, was there anything that you took from this one as a positive? I mean, it's hard to
Oh,
find
no,
any positives
no,
whatsoever.
no, no, no. Yeah, well, here, yeah, there is more clarity of the direction that they need to take this offseason and moving forward.
Yeah,
That was a positive. Sometimes in life, those lessons don't always come to you in positive ways. Sometimes you gotta have to be smacked across the face to learn some things, whether or not you're ready for it. The universe has different plans in store for you, and that was one of those. So I do think it was a positive because once you get over the initial emotion of losing to that degree, you understand what you don't have more and what you do need more. And so if you
yeah,
focus more on what you need as opposed to what you don't have, you can turn it into a productive um, experience, even if it was painful.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you. If I'm really going to look hard for any positives on the field, I
Oh
would
no.
say this. I would say this. A couple. Tawfiq Bayard's a baller, and I know it's hard to point anything on the defense, but that kid's a baller.
Can I just say something on him real quick? It
Yeah,
even got to him too. His effort in the second half when I went back and watched chasing some of these plays down just wasn't there. So
right. And
I don't want to give
yeah,
too much credit. I really don't.
I think human nature sets in sometimes,
I
and
agree. You're down 43 nothing. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
demoralizing.
yeah. But I mean, he was the one making plays. Jeremiah Brown was okay at times the other night.
I agree.
I also, it was nice to finally see. I know it was late, and the game was out of hand, but Cam Michael, popped a little bit in the run game. You saw a little bit of that. But other than that, I mean, there's nothing else. I mean, hey,
Hey
Mata was
folks,
perfect.
folks, you see what Brian's doing here? It's years of experience watching the worst football imaginable and finding the smallest shreds of light
Yeah,
to find from it because that is what Colorado football has been.
yeah,
What you just did there in a 53-7 game, there's a lot of people who don't get it. And that in a nutshell is what it has been like to be a Colorado football fan for the better part of the last 2 decades. Well, you got your teeth absolutely
or
kicked in, but at least they
Colorado
didn't
beat
break
writer.
your right. That but
Yeah,
okay, sure. To cover this team, you got your teeth kicked in, but at least you didn't break your nose. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like that's where we're at here. And where I say you kind of have to look at it in two different lights is as far as it relates to this week at Arizona, Utah's forgotten. You got your ass kicked. It happened.
yeah,
We're moving on.
yeah,
There's no deeper reason other than we weren't focused, we weren't locked in, we didn't come ready to play. Utah's coming off a brutal loss. They were pissed about that. They were pissed about last year, and they were better coached, better prepared, and ready to go. Like
yeah,
period. You
yeah,
just got you just got drubbed. Move on.
yeah. Yep.
And that's why I asked Coach Prime afterwards, this is so bad. It's clearly not indicative of what your team has been. So while you got to figure out why some of that stuff happened, I think the reasons behind that are actually more important to what happens in the offseason as
Yeah.
opposed to what happens the rest of this year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. And so let me ask you this. As you look at not just Saturday, because I mean, as you mentioned, that's not what they've been all season, but it was the worst game, obviously. It probably exposed some things more. But they're clearly under, I think they've been underachieving for a lot of this season. What's a bigger issue to you? Coaching or players?
Oh.
Coaching or talent? I think they're lacking in both.
It's both. I'm trying to think if I believe it's one more than the other. Um, as it relates to 2025, I think it's talent. As it relates to the future, I think it's coaching.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because you and I, yesterday I'm at the airport, we were texting back and forth, and we were discussing something that
Yeah.
we were kind of throwing out sort of in jest, but I think both of us were thinking this is not a bad idea. This coaching carousel has become insane in college football right now, right?
Yeah.
And you've got now Brian Kelly, James Franklin, Mike Gundy.
Oh, we're gonna bring this up? Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought it was a fun topic, you know.
No,
So
it is
I
a
know I'm
fun
springing it on
topic.
you. And so
Yeah.
as it relates to coaching, right? Okay, you got all these big names. There's others, right? Who am I forgetting? Kelly, Franklin, Gundy, Billy Napier. You
Kelly.
know,
Oh, you said Kelly. Yeah.
yeah. So you got all these guys, right?
Yeah.
If you're
Jay
Dia,
Norvell.
yeah, we won't go there.
Just
But
a
he is,
moment of celebration for Jay losing his job. Sorry, moving on.
but he is available.
Yeah, he is.
I'm just curious. It's you and I were discussing this on text. I don't think it's the worst idea. If you're Deion Sanders, do you bring one or two of those guys in, not hiring them, but bring them in and say, evaluate this. Tell me what you think that we have going on right here that we need to improve on. Is it worth that? Not stepping
Okay.
on anybody's toes,
Yeah.
but to give Coach Prime an outsider's perspective and assessment of his program.
I know that he does that in other ways with other people. You and I jokingly said something to you because I think it could be incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this that Coach Prime can do really well. I think from a directorial perspective, it wouldn't hurt to hear what some of these guys would have to say about the way things are going. Do I think this is realistic? No, I don't, for many different reasons. However, I if it were me, I'll just put it this way. There's an old adage, and I'm gonna go back to Confucius essentially, where the phrase "you never want to be the smartest person in the room" comes from. I heard that a long time ago, and it's been one of the most beneficial piece of advice in my opinion. You know, you always, first of all, knowing your weaknesses is one of your greatest strengths. Always surround yourself with people who really know what they're doing. Always be willing to listen to those people and be willing to be open to wherever that comes from. I think it would be incredibly beneficial to call Mike Gundy and say, "Hey, do you want to spend a week around the program and just give me your thoughts just as a consultant?
Just stand on the sidelines and observe practice.
I don't need you to
Observe,
talk to anybody or
come
say
sit in our
anything.
meeting rooms. Just sit in the back of the room, and at the end of the week,
Talk to me."
let's talk and give me a report.
I I would call Franklin. I would call Gundy. I mean, I would do that. I would, and you know what? I would call them both. And if they both wanted to do it, great. I mean, I don't know if they would, and this wouldn't probably be something that I would talk about or even bring up or have on well off or have any video evidence of.
Yeah,
I would do it quietly behind the scenes and have an auditor come in because I think Coach Prime needs a little bit of guidance from somebody like that who can really see something hands on. Because this is the let's see, he said it after the TCU game, he said it after the BYU game. So this was the third one. And then Houston was a little bit different because they were in between quarterbacks. This is not the first time. I'll just put it this way. It's not the first time in a post-game presser where I genuinely believe that he didn't have the answers to the problems that are happening right now. And that's okay. Like, I want to put that out there. Like, it doesn't mean that he's any less of a coach, but what it means is that he doesn't have the solutions. And maybe there aren't any. But I think that moving forward, what has happened this year overall, if they're truly trying to have the standard of putting his face on the flat irons, what has happened this year has provided a lot of lessons to learn from as far as what to correct, what to do differently moving forward. Because even behind the scenes, privately, they've acknowledged that with, for instance, we can just talk about it with Caden Salter. They know they have to be better in
Yeah,
evaluation. They know they didn't hit there 100%, and what they need is that on the coaching staff right now, in
yeah,
my opinion.
yeah.
And so I thought it was an interesting idea. I don't think Coach Prime would do it,
Yeah,
but because it's not an easy thing to do, and it's probably not an easy thing to ask. But Brian, it wouldn't. I wouldn't even think twice.
yeah. I'm not so sure he wouldn't do it, and but I will say I don't say it because I think he's a bad coach or anything like that.
No,
I think that sometimes. Uh, I think this goes with coaching. I think it goes with all aspects of life. Sometimes you're so close and ingrained in a situation that you don't see the flaws, and it's beneficial for someone on the outside that's neutral, that doesn't really isn't familiar to come in and observe a little bit and say, you know what, I think you have a problem with this. I think you have a problem with that. You know, and I think it's not. I think any coach struggling could do the same thing. It doesn't make him a bad coach. I think it's just it helps sometimes for somebody to come in and observe and say, you know what, you should do this and that.
why not? Coach Prime's job security is almost obsolete.
Yeah.
Absolute, absolute,
Yeah.
absolute.
Yeah.
There's no pressure. You're just receiving guidance. And he's talked about so many times how much respect he has for a lot of these guys that have been in the profession for so long. So it's not like I don't think he would be receptive to it. I'm just not sure that they would do that, right? And
But I'll say this too, Matt, real quick. Sorry to interrupt you, but
you're
it's
fine.
not unprecedented. I mean, this is, you know, coach when Alabama a couple years ago, I don't know if it wasn't Saban's last year, I don't think, but when they were in the playoff, remember he brings in George Hilo as a consultant. Coaches have brought in consultants. Hey, you're out of a job, come in and just be a consultant here. And so this wouldn't even be a consultant. This is just we just come hang out for a week. I've got a huge house. Come stay in my house. Just come out for
Just
a
put him
week
up
and
at the hotel and
yeah,
just be done with it. Yes,
right.
I'm with you. I think it's a great idea. I don't think it's really worth us talking about too much more because I
Yeah,
think it would make a lot of sense, but it's not realistic. I brought it up in jest, but I think it would be smart because after listening to Kyle Whittingham the other day, like there's just some things that you learn through all those years of experience that you don't trip yourself up on
yeah,
later in your career that I think could be beneficial and could just having another perspective. It doesn't mean that you do what they say. And no, I don't think it means Coach Prime's a bad coach. I just think there's some parts of this that he needs to develop. And
yeah,
when you don't have the answers, that's kind of what it is. Like, I mean, he's saying he's dumbfounded. If you're dumbfounded after 2 weeks of practice, that could happen to such a degree, you probably need another set of eyes
yeah,
to just point some things out. And it's not
yeah,
it really isn't a criticism. It's just like, hey, your aces at part of this. You need to
yeah,
develop another part of this. And you know, when it comes to those elite programs right now, it's not that they're just getting outclassed on the field. If they were getting outclassed because they didn't have the talent, but the right ideas were there, that would
yeah,
be different. They're
yeah,
getting thoroughly outcoached. Coach Prime admits it himself. Like it's he's getting exposed, not just outcoached.
yeah,
And it doesn't mean that he can't beat a Matt Campbell, on a one-off, but it also makes me look at the Iowa State game a little bit differently and kind of look and They kind of got that, cloak and dagger. Iowa State goes for it, on inside their own 20 on fourth down, and they punt away. And after that QB draw, it's like there were plenty of chances Iowa State kind of pissed away too in that game. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things where, um, first of all, we can talk about what it means for the offseason because I have some of those thoughts too. But as far as what it meant the other night, it just meant you have a long way to go. You just have a
Yeah.
really that, and it's not anything we didn't know. I believe you and I said on the podcast last week that we didn't think they were going to get blown out. I think we said it was about a 10-point game. I thought that coming off the Iowa State game, there would be a little momentum. It looked like they took a couple of days off and forgot what they were doing. And
Yeah.
and forgot what had happened and just said, "All right, well, it was cool." It was like you know what I actually thought when they beat Iowa State and Swayze was doing the worm and all that, I was like, these guys are celebrating like it's their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And normally, when you do that in season in that type of environment after losing a couple and needing one, it doesn't usually go well the next week unless you have great leadership. And this team, it's right up there with the worst leadership on any team I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. Like even the bad years at CU, this is right up there with some of the worst years at CU.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And yeah, I did when we were doing our predictions last week. I was like, yeah, I don't think it'll be a blowout game. I was feeling worse about it as we got to the game. I was walking on the field before the game and chatting with the DNVR guys, and I was like, I think CU is capable of winning this game. I think they're very capable of getting blown out. And they were like, no. I'm like, no, I could see that potentially happening,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
um, and unfortunately it happened. I didn't think it would be that bad. I mean,
No, that was
when I thought, maybe blown out, I thought 35-17, something like that, not
42-10.
something like that, not like what happened, but
Yeah.
um, you know, so real quick, as far as coach mentioned, it's being addressed, it'll be addressed. He hinted at changes, things like that. I mean, so far as we know, I know he's been fired. Um, to me, what do you think? I mean, what will there be changes coaching staff wise this week? I think absolutely, and maybe this goes to what you want to talk about is that I think what last night or what Saturday night solidified is that there will be a staff overhaul in this offseason.
Oh,
If Coach Prime's coming back next year,
yeah.
I think it's gonna be a staff overhaul, and maybe we saw it last year with you know Coach Gary Harrell's been was with him for a long time, and he moved on from him. It might be time to move on from some friends, right?
It might. It might. I mean, that's a Coach Prime decision. I mean, we could go up and down that staff, and I could make arguments for and against a lot of these guys based upon how things have gone here right now. You know what I mean? Like, Kevin Mathis looked unbelievable and was getting, interviews with the Saints. This year looks really tough. Andre Hart last year had Nakai Hill Green and Levante Bentley and found a way to make it work all year long. They haven't recruited very well at the linebacker position, and even he has known, he's told us before that, at the end of that 2023 season, he's like, guys don't know if they should pay their mortgage. It will
Yeah,
be that type of atmosphere if they don't win the next couple of games.
yeah,
In fact, a bad loss to Arizona will push this right over the cliff.
yeah,
That is when it'll go right over the cliff. I think they're like right there. But there's still bowl eligibility left, and there still is a ton to play for. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about Jason Phillips and some of these guys that are good friends of his. I don't know. I'm not behind the scenes, so it's impossible for me to say that. The ones that are the most clear and obvious, in my opinion, are the coordinators. Only because, and I'm not saying the ones you can evaluate from an outside perspective, from a clear and obvious perspective, are the coordinators because everything falls at them, and they're typically the play callers, unless it's the head coach.
yeah,
And in this situation, they're both the play callers. So I think those, from an outside perspective, can be evaluated. Without being there every day, it's really hard for me to say that about position coaches and what they're doing. And I can evaluate you by your group and if they're getting
right,
better.
yeah.
Like running back, definitely gotten better. Marshall Falk, significant upgrade. I mean, maybe we shouldn't
I
be surprised, but I
I
would
think
say definitively.
I think that he's arguably best coach on the staff this year. He's had the best year. I mean, I would put Gunnar White up there as well. Not maybe not right now. Doesn't seem like it the way the offensive line was the other night, but um, that group has been improved this year as well. And um, yeah, but yeah, you're right. I think you can evaluate guys looking at positions and like yeah, Kevin Mathis you mentioned, getting interviews with the NFL this last year, like that corner group has not been good.
They've been awful.
You know, uh,
But I do believe a lot of that is talent too. I
yeah,
think a lot of that is talent too. Like they don't outside of DJ and Preston, and I think Preston's had a pretty rough year, if I'm being honest. I have been
yeah,
pretty he might be my most disappointing player of 2025 so far, if I'm being real
yeah.
with
Even
you.
the other night, he had an interception right in his hands and
Yeah.
dropped it.
Yeah, he just can't make a play this year for
But
whatever reason.
but again, yes, it's talent, but as coaches, and I know that this staff maybe is not as hands-on recruiting as in the past, but you have a hand in bringing those people in, and you're not bringing in the talent.
Oh
Um,
my God, of course. No, no, no. I mean, it's a chicken or the egg argument
yeah,
in that regard. No, no, no. That's not what I'm saying. They have clearly missed on evaluations.
yeah,
I think I'm operating under the assumption that no shit. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, yeah,
yeah,
they screwed up. But it's
yeah,
about the actual development and what's happening here and what they're doing. It's like I mean, I don't see what linebacker drills, Andre Hart is running every day. I don't
yeah.
know. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
Yeah, I'm just going off performance and like Coach Prime every week just about talks about we need more consistency out of linebacker.
yeah,
Um, and hey, I don't know if we should remind everybody, but that was one of our two red flag spots all the way back to spring, right?
yeah.
I don't think you and I are surprised that linebacker is struggling. Wide
The
receiver,
biggest surprise is that Jeremiah Brown has actually come on the last three games and been decent.
yeah, yeah,
I would be honest, like he I mean, I had no expectations for him. The last
yeah,
three games, he has unequivocally been their best linebacker.
yeah.
French looks maybe like the worst player on the team that's receiving snaps at this point, in my opinion. Hughes just doesn't play much. Um,
Well, he
I
has
mean, like
been. He didn't the other night, but
it's just kind of, but like even when he's playing, like it's been okay. But I mean, that
yeah,
position's a mess.
yeah. Uh, Receiver was supposed to be incredibly deep, and it's been two guys, both of which were benched this last week.
Oh,
Joseph for the entire game. Omarion comes back in the second half, but that's part of the other night is you not only your offensive line was not only bad, you're going against this team. I wonder if Utah saw that and said, you know what, they've benched their top two receivers. Let's just go after them because
it
those are
wasn't. It
the
wasn't because Whittingham said that was their plan to make him
I'm sure
throw
it
and
was.
load the
I'm sure it
box.
was, but that helped it, right? Is that you have all
Sure.
that plus you take Caden's top two options out, and there was no shot. I mean, outside of those top two receivers, who has stepped up receiver wise? You know,
I also quite frankly don't understand why Omarion played at all in that game if that happened. And so clearly Joseph's infraction must have been worse because he
that's what
didn't
I was
play.
curious about. Like, what would Joseph have done unless it was like Omarion showed up late and Joseph didn't show up at all?
That would have to be it. Or Joseph didn't show up till Monday and Omarion like his flight was delayed. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like that was
yeah.
I could see that being the case.
So
But
I don't know, but whatever it was just a collection of bad stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that has to be evaluated. I would be a little surprised if there's play calling changes at this point,
no.
just because number one, Robert Livingston, the defense was horrible the other night, but you just made him the highest paid assistant coach in CU history. You can't afford to do much with him, right? And offensive coordinator wise, it's funny, Matt. They've got three other guys on this staff that have been Coach Prime's coordinators, but he also moved on from all three of them. Brett Bartoloni, Jason Phillips, and Michael Pollock have all been his offensive coordinator at one point at Jackson State, and he has moved on from all of them as offensive coordinator. Do you go back to any one of them? So I'm not sure there's a lot of options.
No, but we should talk about that. And I've been debating upon putting something out on social media about my takeaway on this one, but until we had time to talk about it on the pod, I didn't want to. Whew. Offensively, it's time for a change. Um, I have been as ardent a defender of giving Pat Shermer a shot as anybody, not because I think it's been overwhelmingly good, but because I think that the circumstances he's had to deal with here are irregular. And whether that be essentially being neutered from a play caller perspective and deferring to your quarterback for a year and a half. And not that sounds harsh. It's not how it meant to be. I just meant being in a job where, that part of it is essentially delegated to somebody else. And in his situation, it was his college quarterback. When Ryan Staub came in the other night, it was clear. It was like he needs that guy, and Caden's not that. Caden will do what he calls. For
Yeah.
some reason, Caden's not far enough along to make the real checks on his own, audible, and really do. I just don't see that stuff. Maybe it's happening. I highly doubt it's happening based upon everything that I've seen so far. And Ryan, when he got in there, he had just much more, like, Pat was hands off. And I think that's where they have developed a system. If you continue with Pat Shermer, you need a quarterback who's almost there already. They can't need any hand holding. If they do, he's not the right fit. Um, some of the concepts, there was one play in particular, and this was just one example of why I think he has to change this up. And I'm sorry, I hate saying this. I really like Pat Shermer personally. It's not personal, but there's a 3rd and 10. They're backed up at their own goal line, and it's 17-0 in the first quarter. The play call calls for, I think it's 11 personnel. Yeah, it's 11 personnel because Atkins is in the game. He's got Welch and Gibson in there on a 3rd and 10. Tight to the formation is Gibson because he's going to chip one of Utah's blitzers. So his solution to all this pressure is to put Quentin Gibson into chip on 3rd and 10, backed up. Caden's only two options are for Gibson off a chip on a little bit of a flat route. Then he's got two guys running route concepts that are like 25, 30 yards down the field. It's 17-0 because Colorado cannot stop Utah's pressure. You are all the way backed up almost to your own goal line. It is 3rd and 10. The two top options on this play assume that you're going to be able to hold up enough for your quarterback to be able to deliver a ball 25, 30 yards down the field. That's not happening, number one.
Mhm.
That was clear and obvious. Number two, Quentin Gibson and Micah Welch are your two solutions to free blitzers. Get real.
Quentin
Number
Gibson,
three,
who weighs 150 pounds.
and he got blown up and he didn't
Yeah.
really know what he was doing.
Hmm.
And Salter just has to throw it away. In fact, that was the safety. That was the safety. And the
Yeah.
reason he got the safety is because you either get rid of the football or take the sack. But either way, it's a safety. He just saved himself from getting crushed. So I now, looking back on it, I'm really not blaming Salter because the play call is so bad and the intention of what they're trying to do is so wrong that I don't think there's any fixing it because those are the same problems we've seen now for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And if Coach Shermer had been making adjustments to show different things, he had 2 more weeks and it was the same. And this is what got Sean Lewis fired. Sean Lewis, after Stanford, got figured out. He got figured out halfway through the Stanford game. They knew what they were doing. Colorado could not move the ball offensively in the second half, and Stanford went all up and down the field on him. It was the crossers, don't you remember? I mean, it was the same old. After that, they had 2 weeks off for the bye and went to UCLA. They ran the same stuff, and UCLA had watched it all on film, and UCLA destroyed them
Yeah.
and hurt Shador in the
Yeah.
process. That's what happened the other night. Didn't make enough progress as an offense or a defense, didn't have game specific things, were clearly just working on what has been happening, and you're not evolving. And I think it's ironic that Pat Shermer attached himself so much to the question that I asked him last year about evolving or refining as an offense, because he's really bad at that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say that. Again, it's nothing personal, but the results come out in the wash. This is no longer a Caden thing, in my opinion. Caden is missing throws. No question. He's missing first reads that could help out. There's no doubt about it. Okay. I'm not absolving him of sin. But the other night, when I asked him afterwards, is that the most pressure he's seen? He said he watched 10 hours of film this week. I
Yeah.
have asked around. I've asked around all former D1 quarterbacks, three of them, two of them played in the NFL. Everybody said that's incredibly light. You should have minimum 20 hours of film coming off. Minimum, bare minimum coming off. He said when he was a starting quarterback, it was at least 3 hours a day. If that was the case, can be looking at like 15 as opposed to 10. Number one, not enough work is being put in. That's number one, which is Caden's thing. But the truth is, he was ready to go enough, I thought, for that game. The problem was Utah did throw a bunch of stuff and they didn't adjust.
Yeah.
Colorado was still looking for 20, 30-yard routes down the field instead of the tempo quick game. So I will put that on Caden Salter if he was making the wrong reads, throwing interceptions, making bad plays. The one interception he threw, he had to get rid of and just take the shot because he was about to get killed again because they couldn't adjust and have him do a little quick game. They just haven't done it. So it's the lack of recognition from Pat Shurmur to adjust on the fly. It's the lack of ability to stack things in an offense. Week after week, they play established programs, and even if they're established, they are able to layer their offense over the course of a season. He's not, and it's just not a good fit. Um his approach is antiquated. His approach is antiquated, and it's a shame because I really like Pat, but I'm not advocating to change it right now because I don't think it makes a difference. But next year he cannot return.
Well, it's part of why when I look at this last game and the stats were horrible for Caden. 9 of 22, 37 yards. You throw the ball 22 times, you get 37 yards. And Caden says it afterwards. He goes, almost all my incompletions were probably throwaways, and
He's right.
he's about right. PFF had him for 7 throwaways. I thought it was a higher number than that. I bet
Yeah.
if you go and watch it, it was a bigger number than that. Um, and I asked Coach Prime this. I'm like, well, how difficult is it for Caden, to even do anything when he has no time like that? And he just kind of he goes, it's difficult. That's all he said. The, a lot of the narrative from this last week I see from fans and stuff is it's time to move on to Juju. I disagree. Like, why would it be any different? And I think that while it's hard to imagine it being worse, I think it would have been worse the other night with Juju. And this is Juju has got all the talent in the world. If he was ready to play, he would be playing right now. And so if you throw a guy out there that's not ready to play against that, I mean, I honestly, maybe you disagree with this. I think CU could have put Shador back there the other day, and they still would have been
Yeah.
absolutely blown out.
Yeah.
So it would have looked better. Shador would have had more than 37 yards passing, and maybe they would have, scored a little bit
They would
more.
have lost 42-21 instead of 53-7.
But it still would have been no contest.
Yep.
Um, you know, it made it look a little bit better. You're right, but they had no shot in that game, regardless who the quarterback was. And so this is why I'm not moving on from Caden yet. 2 games ago, Caden, we were celebrating Caden, right? Because again, PFF or whatever rated him as the highest. He was the highest rated passer in the country that week. I don't know how, but he had a really good game against Iowa State. He has a horrible game against Utah. Keep him going. He's been good at home. I think that, and you and I have talked about this as well. As long as you're still bowl eligible or potentially bowl eligible, Caden's your guy.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about moving forward. I do want to
If
address.
this, I will say real quick, if this, you mentioned kind of being on you're kind of teetering at this point. If you lose this week in Arizona, then fine. You're 3-6, and yes, you could win the last 3 and go to a bowl. You're not going to at that point. Move on. I'm fine moving on at that point. I wouldn't do it yet.
So I also want to address defense because, I saw a lot of people blaming certain people. If I'm going to talk about Pat Shurmur, I can't also then not talk about Robert Livingston, whose defense gave up 53 points and would
Yeah.
have been worse if Utah kept the dogs on.
Mhm.
I do want to get to that point you just made, so I just want to put a pin in what to do about the quarterback moving forward. As far as the defense, it's hard to say. Clearly, Robert Livingston is having significant problems with instructing how to handle the option game. because every week it's the same. They don't know who's got the ball. They're crashing down way too hard and they get beat on the backside, whether it's the running back taking it on the outside or the quarterback pulls it. They're getting destroyed. They have no idea how to read that. And I'm not sure they know how to coach that. That's number one. Number two, I do believe he is working with a significantly bigger talent deficiency issue on the defense than Pat Shermer's working with on the offense. So I
Yep.
don't believe as much of the defensive mistakes are on Robert Livingston. Number three, whenever Coach Prime has been asked about Robert Livingston, not once has he ever truly criticized the calls he's made when given the opportunity. When CU has had bad games, he has even vindicated him in I thought his calls were good in specific situations. He's like, the call was there. We just didn't execute. Maybe that's coach speak. Maybe that is. I'm open to that. I'm sure there's been stuff that they've had to work on, but by and large, to me, it seems like there's a there is a problem with learning how to deal with the read game and the run game, certainly, and how to fill those gaps clearly. I think a lot more of that is a talent issue, though. I
Yep.
do.
Hmm.
So like for people saying fire Robert Livingston, the only reason Robert Livingston's going to stay is because he just signed a contract. I don't think that's true. Like I think they
Yeah.
missed way more in recruiting defensively with their secondary and even, with the injuries they've suffered in that linebacker room. So I'm not all that worried about it. I believe if you were to give him a talented team, he could make it work. I think
Like
he's got
last
some.
year.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think he's got, and even last year, I mean, Shador made it work. It wasn't Pat Shermer. It was Shador and Travis calling everything on the
No,
sideline.
I mean defensively.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying
Yeah.
by comparison
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, they were good last year, but it was because of Shador and Travis. Like, I mean, it really wasn't because of
No,
Pat
but
Shermer.
I mean, I'm talking about defensively.
I
You know,
know.
you're talking about Robert Livingston, get him some talent. Last
I'm
year, yes, it was Shador and Travis, but that defense was pretty salty at times.
That's what I'm. No, no, no. The defense was very effective. They
Yeah.
were led the Big 12 in sacks. They generated a lot of takeaways, but they had a very talented group, and we've talked about
Yeah.
it ad nauseum. I'm saying by comparison, well, Pat Shermer had a good offense last year too. It's like, well, it was kind of in spite of him
Okay.
that
Yeah.
they had a good offense,
Yeah.
and in spite of their offensive line, he was a safe enough choice. The reason he was brought in was to get Shador prepared and shit. Brian, he might have failed at that more than anything that he failed at, you know,
Yeah.
as far as their offense has gone. And it's not that
Yeah.
he's been terrible, it's just not good enough, not for their standard of where they're trying to go, unfortunately. So maybe it's by nature the fact that Robert Livingston hasn't been going at this as long and isn't as long in the tooth, but I
Yeah.
think he gets more of an opportunity as far as moving forward goes. So that's I just wanted
Yeah.
to put a bow tie on that and just say, okay, so that's at least now fans out there, you know where I stand on it, at least.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you especially as far as talent. This run defense now ranks 134th out of 136. And we thought coming in, defensive line was probably the one of the best and deepest groups on this team, right? Out of nine guys, you had six seniors. You had Jaheim Otis coming in as a fourth year junior that was one of the highest rated guys in the portal. And you look at that group and it's like, well, Lightfoot's one of those seniors he hasn't played because he's hurt and he's out for the year. Tavion Coleman, he's been out for 4 games in a row or whatever it is now. We think he's done for the year. Um, Torian Carter is one of those guys. He's played 23 snaps all year. He's not doing enough to get on the field. Jaheim Otis, I remember him making 2 plays in about a 3 play stretch early second quarter against Georgia Tech. Has he made a play since?
No.
You know, um, so these are 4 guys you were thinking were really good, and they knew it right away. All those seniors and who starts game one? The freshmen in the room, Brandon Davis Swain, and so they're really leaning on 3 guys right now, and it's Amari McNeil, Anquin Barnes, um, and Brandon Davis Swain, and they've been
They're all
okay,
hurt. They're all
and
hurt.
they're okay, but like the group is not as deep as we thought. Um, Several of those guys are hurt, and then again, at linebacker, another key to stopping the run. We've talked about it. Um, other than Jeremiah, the last 3 games. Jeremiah was terrible against Houston, and
Oh, awful.
he got benched the next week. But he's come back to his credit. He's played really well the last 3 games. French and Hughes, who knows what you're
Total
getting from
misses.
who knows what you're getting from play to play. But I mean, you're most likely not getting great stuff out of those guys. And so,
Are only playing due to necessity. Are
yes,
only playing due to necessity.
because who else you have there, you know?
Right.
And so, this is yes, that's why I agree with you. Like as far as Livingston goes, like how are you stopping the run with these guys? You know, I mean, you're depleted in some of these areas, and even defensive end. Yes, Arden Walker has he's been pretty solid at times. Keaton Wade's been pretty solid at times. They've been okay. Alex McPherson is, he's flashed a little bit as a young guy. Alex McPherson played like 8 plays the other night.
He was
Um,
bad.
Sam Okunlola, played the first game. He's done, and that's one of your key guys, right? And London Merritt's been solid at times, but I don't remember him from the other night. So yeah, I think it's a talent deficiency. And then, again, your secondary, we can go through all that too. That second corner spot. I mean, DJ, first off, at the number one corner, has not been great. I don't think he's been horrible, but he hasn't been great. And then that second corner has just been such a revolving door.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever stepped up. Um,
Outside of DJ McKinney, the rest of the cornerback room looks really bad right now.
yeah. And RJ Johnson, I think, is close to coming back, and he was solid early in the year, but
He was not good in the Georgia Tech game.
no, he was better when he was playing than what we're seeing on these other guys.
Sure.
So at least it's another option, right? And then
Yeah.
safety, your top two guys are essentially Tawfiq Byard and Carter Statmeyer, but Carter hasn't been great. He was out this last week, and I was telling you earlier today, their highest rated safety, their highest rated defensive back on PFF is Ben Finisa.
Ben is a great kid. Played so bad the other night that it is actually insane that they couldn't take him off the field. He was so bad in that game in so many different ways that I just sat there and I was like, they told Trevor Woods to leave, man. And this
Yeah.
is what they're doing. Like, how stupid were you to think you were better than that? Like, that was, I mean, Trevor would have been a great leader for this defense in many ways. Who knows what
Mhm.
the season looks like? I mean, I
Yeah.
just was like, I was watching that, watching them just getting blown by at the second level. Ben just getting, his ankles broken. Ben's a nice kid. Ben was never supposed to play at this level of college football,
Yeah.
um, and not as a significant contributor. So, and Ben wouldn't disagree with that. So, it is what it is. They've got a real talent deficiency. Tawfiq Byard, we're talking about as the leader of this group, but the kid's a sophomore.
Yeah.
And so yes, but I was thinking about this, like who are the leaders of this team? And that's why, some people got mad at us in the comments when what was it, 2, 3 shows ago, we were asking who the leaders are, and I said Byard and Seaton, and I did this, and you mentioned I was like, nope, nope, nope,
Yeah.
nope, and that was Omarion and Draylon. Shit, Omarion Miller's not a leader. Nice kid, not a leader. How on earth, unless it was something beyond his control, which I find it hard to believe, how on earth as the number one receiver on this team, do you not show up? That's insane. And
Yeah.
when you brought it up to Coach Prime after the game and you said, two of your leaders, he was like, leaders? No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Stop. And that's who was supposed to be leaders this year.
And it's funny because like I think it was you I was talking to afterwards. Like in my head, I had meant
Yeah.
leading receivers, right? They're your top two options. But um
But you know what, Brian? You
his
should have been able to say leaders because those guys should be
yeah,
leaders.
I know. But his response to me told a lot
Yeah.
because and I did ask it in a way that yes, I inferred they were leaders. But his response said a lot like, no, no, no. You don't throw that word around
No.
because we don't use that word lightly. And he was basically saying, do not even consider calling those two kids leaders.
No.
And
No.
they should, and you're right. You should be calling them leaders.
This was their time.
Yeah.
Omarion was his whole story about how he almost transferred because he wasn't getting the playing time. Buddy, it is your time to shine.
Yeah.
And I just like he missed a boatload of time already this year with the hamstring. Like, why are you even leaving? Why are
Yeah.
you even leaving?
Yeah.
What I don't think they should have left. I'll put that out there. Coming off that Iowa State game, I think the worst thing to do was to give them as big a break as they did. I think the reason was because there were some other people that wanted to get away.
Yeah.
Um, I'll leave it at that. I think that should have been different. Hard for me to say that though, when I'm
including
not in the building.
including the head coach.
I believe that was part of it. I
Yeah,
believe that was part of it. And who could blame him after what
and
he's
I'm
been
not,
through?
and I'm not saying nobody should have a time. You should have time off. That's part of the bye week. But
But at that time, coming off your biggest win, trying to salvage your season, the last thing you should have ever done was send these guys home because when they showed back up, they're not pros, Brian. They're not. They're
yeah,
kids. They're kids. I know that this is run like an NFL system, but you don't have play. You know what my mom said to me when I got home from Utah and I talked to her yesterday? You know what she said to me? She's like, that was awful. That was embarrassing. Where's their foundation? My mom, who watches no football all year except for maybe a Buffs game because I cover the team.
yeah,
Okay. She goes, but my grandfather she grew up in a sports house. She knows where's their foundation? They got
yeah,
nothing. Like, who do they rely on? Who's
yeah,
any even good?
yeah,
And she's been watching all year. And I was like, you're right. And this is somebody who really doesn't have any context being able to see it. And it's a problem. It's a
yeah.
problem.
So let's before we get out of here, let's talk about they got 4 games left. There's still, you asked Coach Prime, there's still bowl eligibility. He shot that down quickly and said, "We're not even thinking about that," and I get it. I want to share with you my theory as to why there should be hope going forward. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this a lot. Yesterday I'm at the airport, and I think that because you and I have talked a lot about the one of the worst things I think you can do after this is overreact too much and make a whole bunch of drastic changes because you are a week removed from, having a really good, nice win and thinking you're turning your season around. So you can still do that. I was telling you this theory that I have that, there's this combination that CU struggles with when their opponent has culture, talent, and the Buffs are on the road. Those three things. Nobody has better culture in the Big 12 than Utah right now. Kyle Whittingham's been there for 21 years. They've been
Oh yeah.
recruiting to that for that long. Morgan Scalley is in his 10th year as a defensive coordinator. It's no surprise that they look like that defensively. They've looked like that forever, right? They've got talent because they've been recruiting there, and Utah's one of the top teams. And the game's on the road. I don't think CU has a shot in games like that. So as I look forward to the next 4 games, I look at it and I say, you know what? This week, Arizona. Arizona doesn't have that culture. They have a second year coach that's still trying to get going. And their talent is fine. And the game's in Boulder. I think the Buffs can absolutely win this week. You look next week, West Virginia. There's no culture at West Virginia. Rich Rod's in his first year back there. It's a brand new team. He did what Coach Prime did year one. He's got 70 new players, right? The talent's not there. They're not very good. Now the game's on the road, so that is going to make it tough. And then you have Arizona State here, who's got good culture, from what it appears. It's got a decent amount of talent, but the game's in Boulder. So it's going to be tough. I was telling you, I think that Arizona State game looks a little bit like the BYU and Georgia Tech games. You can be in that game and win it.
You're still not in on BYU yet after losing our show bet last week. You
Of
still
course I am.
putting BYU in the second tier after I told you they
I
were
told
going in to Ames, Iowa,
Stop
and
interrupting
coming
me.
out with the win.
I've got BYU in the top 10 of my ballot,
I'm
so leave
teasing.
me alone.
I'm just
Um,
teasing you.
but then you go to Kansas State. Kansas State's gonna be more like what we saw on Saturday. They got culture, they got talent, you're on the road. So my point is you look at these next 4 games. These next three are winnable because you're not facing what you faced on Saturday.
Yeah.
You've got elements there that like, okay, flush. That's why there's a lot of it that says flush that one, move on. Get back to what you're doing those previous 4 weeks because you can beat Arizona. You can beat West Virginia there. Now, if you're 5-5 at that point, you can beat Arizona State at home, get to that bowl game, then go get your butt kicked in Manhattan. Um, and maybe if you win 3 in a row, you got a shot in Manhattan. But that to me is my theory: is that why it maybe wasn't a surprise that they got blown out because CU struggles with that. And you look at the same thing BYU, right, in the bowl game. BYU had culture, talent. It was not a road game, but it's away from Boulder, right? So I just think that's the type of game CU struggles with.
I think it's all very well said, and I like that. And I like that. I think those are certainly the clear signs of very good teams. And when we're
And real,
looking,
real quick, I'm gonna interrupt your point real quick.
you're fine.
this is also goes back to the point you made earlier of me being a longtime beat writer of this program and trying to find the silver lining and saying, okay, here's some hope I have for the next three weeks. So sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I it's fine, but also, and a lot of people, get mad and, turn away. But for those of you, who are rocking with us and still listening, certainly at this point, one thing that I said at the beginning is you have to look at that in two different lights, right? And as we're looking at it in trying to uphold Coach Prime's standard of winning Big 12 titles and making the college football playoff and being a truly elite team in college football, because Brian CU's paying him to be that guy.
Hmm.
He's paying them. In fact, out of the top 15 highest paid coaches in college football, there's only three with losing records, and that's Mark Stoops, Deion Sanders, and Bill Belichick. Those three guys. So, not that it matters, but that's exactly where you're paying him to at a bare minimum. If you're getting paid as a top 15 guy in the world at what you do, you should probably have at least 500 or above, right? You should probably be good enough to have a 500 or above record.
Yeah,
I'll just put that out there. So, you know, that's definitely disappointing, but the other part of this is for the rest of the season. Yeah, you're not going away from Caden Salter now. He won the Iowa State game. He bought himself time. He was not the main reason why you lost the other night. If he was, we could have that conversation. But even
yeah,
still, he just played pretty well in the second half against Iowa State. A bowl game still there at halftime when it was 43 to nothing. I put out a video on my social and I said, "This is going to be an unpopular opinion, but taking anything more out of this as it relates to the rest of this season than what's absolutely necessary is a mistake because you just got killed. You just got beat. You weren't ready to go, and you weren't ready to go in probably the worst spot to be unprepared all season long, and that's what it looks like.
yeah,
Utah's a very good program who doesn't beat themselves. Certainly if they're at full capacity, which they didn't even have their starting quarterback playing, and they still beat the brakes off of you.
yeah,
They made Colorado look like Colorado shouldn't be on the field. So as it relates to trying to uphold Coach Prime standard, it's a colossal failure. As it relates to trying to build a program at Colorado, okay, that it's another point in the process of, all right, we're building, but we still got a ways to go here. We're 3-5. If we make back-to-back bowl games, or at least make a real push for it, it's incredibly important to having some sort of proof of concept coming off of last year and being able to push back against the narrative that it was only Shador and Travis that got you
yeah,
wins. Because I
yeah,
promise you, when we get to the end of this year and that recruiting staff hits the deck and starts recruiting hard, they're going to be recruiting against coaches that say, "Why would you go to Colorado?" They had a really nice year, but that was a little story with Deion. Now it's over. That's what they're going to be saying against
yeah,
college. That's what they're recruiting against. And how can you possibly push back against that if you're Colorado staff, if there's nothing to push back against it with? Like there's nothing to you win 4 games this year. They're not gonna be able to say anything when they're trying to
yeah,
recruit top end guys against better programs, because there's enough of a sample size now to be able to sway the mind of a 16 to 18-year-old kid, right?
right.
19-year-old. And then you've got now only 15 days in January to get all your portal work done. So I think this is very underreported. The whole process of building a team through the portal just got way bleeping harder because now you have to do it in 15 days, and you
Well,
better,
you've got longer than that to get guys. There's only 15 days to get into the portal.
yeah. But that's
So
what I'm saying. Like, you got 15 days of
yeah,
guys to make a decision, Brian, and then it's over, and you're not getting like second and third.
well,
You
they
don't
can
get
yeah they can make a decision after that though. They can
you don't
take a month to make a decision.
you don't get Xavier Hill, you don't get Sincere Brown, you don't get
You're right. You're right.
the Caitlin Taylor.
The very top end guys are they're gonna have that decision made before they jump in the portal probably.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's those
Yeah.
other guys. It's those other guys that are going to get caught in the watch.
Yeah.
And it's going to be harder to build a team that way because you're not going to have as many names, I don't think. And
Yeah.
or you're going to have way more because everybody's just going to do it. Like it's going to be harder to filter it out. That's all I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah.
And they need to do a better job specifically of filtering it out.
Yeah.
So, anyway, side rant over. Uh, where was I talking about? Oh, you stick with Caden Salter because he gives you your best chance to win. Period.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Period. And Arizona's a very winnable game. West Virginia look, they didn't get killed by TCU, but TCU is coming off a couple more high profile games, kind of a
Yeah.
classic spot for a letdown there, I thought. You got to win these next two. Got to win them.
Mhm.
Must win these next two.
Yep.
If you don't, you open yourself up to a lot more, to a lot more of losing recruits. And, that Gavin Mueller kid, he's been, flirting with everybody, Miami, Alabama. Like he
Yep.
says he's in with CU, but you don't make a bowl, you win, you don't win another game, you win 4 games. You can keep that kid. We sure about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
So yeah, Brian, these are very important games, and this team is who they are. Making Brett Bartoloni the OC right now is not going to change a damn thing. I really don't believe it will. Maybe it will, and maybe they should make that change. But that's probably the only thing on the board worth even discussing. And if you don't want to, and if you're just going to keep Pat Shermer there, don't fire him.
Yeah.
Don't demote
Yeah.
him like you did before. Like
Yeah.
that was weird, and allowing him to keep his dignity. Like that was what that was all about. It was made it worse. Sean Lewis just leaked stuff the rest of the season. So, yeah, I think Caden's the guy until mathematically you're eliminated. And if you lose against Arizona, then it's your final three. It's a free three for Juju. And even if Juju isn't ready, you put him out there. And if you don't put him out there, even if he's not ready for a free final 3 games, it is malpractice because it is more about next year than it is about this year. Because if you're not going to make it to a bowl game, your first priority is recruiting who's on your roster. That's your first priority because a
Yep.
lot of those guys are going to want to jump. And especially the big name guys. You're going to have to convince Jordan Seaton that staying here is going to be worth it for him to develop and get better because you're going to have a successful team next year. Going
Yeah.
to be hard to do that if you win 3, 4 games and the culture tanks. So we're getting close to that time, but we're also getting close to the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's gonna be really interesting, and you know, we probably ought to get out of here. I don't know if you want to do real quick predictions for this week, if you want to come back and do a show later this week to preview Arizona, because I'm not sure either of us have really looked at Arizona yet, and maybe
They had a bye to
I
watch
know,
that debacle.
but maybe we want to see how practice goes and how this team is reacting before we do a prediction show as well. So let's maybe come back later this week and do a prediction show before we
That sounds fine.
really get into Arizona. But yeah, we've been talking for a while recapping this. There's a lot to dissect, and Matt, let's see how they respond this week.
All right, buddy.
We'll see you soon.